Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Awaken to Your Soulpath. I am your host, Barbara, and I am joined today by the beautiful Fiona Black. And our topic for today is going to be the freedom to be you. And this is a major topic because all of my clients that come to me are struggling with being a version of themselves that doesn't feel like who they really are, and they are trying to have multiple versions of themselves to appease family or friends, and most of the time this causes people to completely lose sight of who they are, if they have even learned who they actually are to begin with. So I've been looking forward to this talk, and I'm very happy that you're here today, Fiona. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here too.
And so your business is called Freedom with Fiona. So the freedom to be you is beautifully tying into your business title or your business name. And
Mhm.
I think that that also means that you have experienced situations where you did not feel free to be yourself. Am I correct in assuming that?
Absolutely. I think that we really, kind of come in this life feeling quite free and expressive. And then something happens as we continue to go through life and we realize we're not really being who we truly desire to be. Maybe we're living a life that we think we should be living, doing a job that we think we should be doing, and you get on this kind of treadmill, and in that treadmill we really lose the freedom to one, remember who we are, and to
Mhm.
actually be that version who we truly came here to be. And it can cause such friction, right? Such
Yes.
dis-ease in the body, in the
Yes.
mind, in the soul.
Exactly, and this dis-ease, it's a beautiful way of saying it. It can be literally a disease,
Yeah.
but it can also be a dis-ease in the sense of being drained or ending in a burnout, or it can even come in the form of accidents, a car accident, or misstepping and breaking your leg, falling down the stairs, or things like that. And I think these are the universe's ways of slowing us down or pointing things out.
Oh yeah, I would agree 100%. I think that, these wake up calls, the universe kind of like sometimes slapping us in the face or or bumping us in a car, like my experience is that we can have an something internally causes that shift in us, or
Mhm.
something external. And for me, mine was a mixture of internal, like a sense of feeling of just not, how would I explain it? Just not boredom, but I began to, when I was very in my early 20s, I could see what my life would look like. It's like I would
Mhm.
have visions of like, okay, if I take this step and then this step and this step, this is what's going to happen for me. I would know what was going to unfold, and I didn't want it.
Yeah.
I didn't want it. I kind of call it that the fated life. When you're living out
Mhm.
your karma, you're
Yeah.
you're 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 awake, but you're really not consciously making choice.
Mhm.
Like, so maybe you are still in your dream. And I began to become really aware that I was making these choices, but I was like, who is making these choices?
Mhm.
Like, where is the guidance coming from to make these choices? Is it here or is it here? And I was like, this is not heart choice. And
Mhm.
so for me, um I began to wake up to that, but I still didn't do anything. I wasn't ready to make the changes. I was scared. I was comfortable. I didn't know what that looked like. And so then the
Mhm.
universe came in, and I did have like multiple car bumps,
Mhm.
multiple kind of, experiences in the car when there were wake up calls for sure. I was doing a job that I didn't want to do anymore, in a place that I didn't want to be in anymore, and I was ignoring it. And so I had
Yes.
these car bumps, and I was like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
listening. I'm listening.
Yeah, I see that with lots of the clients that come to me. They are supposed to be happy, right? They have a good job, they have a great partner, sometimes they have children, sometimes they have pets. But in all outside appearances, they are seemingly having everything that everybody always says that you should want or that most people do want, and they are not happy with it. And for some, this also comes with shame, because there are lots of people who are not as fortunate to have gone to college or other things, that have to find a really nice guy, or maybe they are having to make do with a job that doesn't suit their soul because, well, they didn't get an education. There are a variety of reasons for people to be jealous of what they have, and still they feel like, well, if this is going to be it until the end of my life, then shoot me now, because I'm not sure if that is what I want to be living. And there's also a lot of shame around it because, yeah, most people want that life and live towards that life. And then here you are saying, I don't want it. I don't like it. It's not satisfying me.
Yeah, I remember feeling really guilty, actually, or like
Mm,
really like, why, I moved to Vancouver Island. I was with my soulmate. I have a beautiful daughter. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I not happy? Like,
mhm,
what is this? And it really, yeah, I felt a lot of guilt and shame about like, why, why can't you just be happy? It's
yes.
like you have those things that you wanted. And I did, and I still have those things, but there was part of me that wasn't being expressed, part of
Mhm,
me that wasn't taking up space. And I feel like it was the biggest part of me. I
mhm,
feel like I was acting in some
yes.
ways, and I could feel that. And
Mm,
actually, the birth of my daughter was a huge. I'd definitely been, I actually moved from England to Vancouver Island. That was a huge piece of my awakening of like, follow my heart, do what feels right. And so I did that. I followed my heart. I moved countries. I left my family, and I love my family. I left my job. I left my career, did the
mhm,
thing. I left, and
yeah.
then I got there and I was with the soulmate, and I was in this beautiful place, and I had my daughter. I'm like, fuck, I'm still not happy. What the hell? I've changed the outside circumstance to look different to what
Mhm,
I thought it was going to be, but there's still a disconnect inside of me. There is still something in me that's not happy.
mhm,
And yeah, that was hard. And I'm sure
yeah.
lots of people can relate to that feeling of, you can change the outside and you can actually get some of the things you really desire, but there's still more.
Yes, and there are two things that I'd like to dive deeper in with you. One would be why we constantly look for things on the outside, while answers are usually on the inside. But
Mhm.
I would like to take it a step further back and talk about how did we get to this point where we have difficulty tapping into our true desires and why we pretend to be someone else. Because if I looked at my life, I had a version of myself for when I was with my friends. I had a
Mhm.
version of myself for when I was with my family. And I figured out I had two different versions for when I was at work. One for when I was talking with my boss, and one for when I was talking with my coworkers. And
Mhm.
for me, this came because I didn't feel that who I actually am was acceptable, wanted,
Mhm.
desirable. And that already started in my early childhood, where I got told that I was weird, or that I was too sensitive, or that I shouldn't take everything so personal, or grow a thicker skin, or all these types of things that made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And I then also have a couple of the Claires, including Claire Sentience. So
Mhm.
I knew things that I had no business of knowing that scared people.
Yeah.
And then they responded to that in a way that made me feel that I couldn't be who I am. And I think that's when I started distancing myself from myself.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a protection, isn't it? We want to
Yes.
belong, we want to feel loved, we want to be taken care of. And so, especially as highly empathic, sensitive beings, which we all are, some of us more than others, well, I wanted everyone to be okay. I wanted to make sure everyone was okay. I felt like
Mhm.
was, because I could sense energy and feel energy and just have knowings and see things, and that other people maybe couldn't or was not discussed. So maybe they could, but wasn't talked about. I was always trying to energetically harmonize or balance the room. Maybe I'd try to be funny to balance out the friction, and so I would always be kind of efforting. There would be an effort to my being in
Mhm.
order to make sure everybody else was okay. And no one asked me to to do that, but it was just this inner sense of wanting there to be peace and balance. And having a really great awareness and having a strong awareness and a strong understanding of what was going on, and feeling like other people didn't. And so it caused me to go out of myself, right? It was like, I often talk about this with clients. It's like when you go out there trying to fix or change or heal energy dynamics outside of you, it's like, who's home? Who's in your energy? It's like, where are you? And so as soon as we leave our body, as soon as we kind of leave our sense of self, it's almost like, you know, when we're clean and clear, we're this clear glass of water, but we can very easily get muddied or colored by the energy of the room or by the energy of the person that we're with, and we adapt to that. And then we get confused about who we really are. We're like, well, who am I? Am I this? Am I that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I recognize it. I was always trying to make sure that everybody else was having a good time before I could have a good time.
Yeah.
It was very important to me that everybody was happy. And I do see this as a trait for the highly sensitive, empathic person. Our focus tends to be outside of ourselves. So we
Yeah.
tend to want to take care of everybody around us, especially the people that we love, that are in our hearts. And we want them to feel good, be okay, have fun, before we can start thinking of ourselves. And in general, that is such a big task that there's not a lot of time and energy left to actually take care of ourselves. And so one of the pitfalls that we have is that we are always there for everybody else, but that we forget to take care of ourselves in the process.
Yeah. And the burnout and the exhaustion and like,
Yeah.
why am I always tired? You know, like this sense of why am I always tired? And it's because you're not home, you're energetically out there, and it becomes an identity too, right? So when it happens so early on and you're not aware that you're doing it, it becomes part of who you are. And so then there's that's part of the people pleasing and, you know, not wanting to upset someone and not liking confrontation because we want this balance and this peace and harmony, because also we've identified as being the one that is that. And so I think as we, you know, as we journey on and we journey on and we like realize we're exhausted, we're burnt out, I'm not actually happy because I don't know what I want, or I don't know how to be in my own energy, something has to change. And for me, it was quite extreme. It was this feeling that something in me needed to die. And it wasn't that I wanted to myself, but it was such a strong feeling that something in me needs to die. An old identification, this old way of being needs to die in order for a true me, authentic self, like this freedom to be myself,
Yes.
you know, came through. And I think to begin with, we just become seekers to begin with, and we seek outside of ourselves first. We look to enlightenment, we look to gurus, you know, we look to books, we just look, and I think that's a natural, I think it's a natural part of the process of expansion of consciousness, until we realize then on our knees that the guru can't give it to us, the book can't give it to us. Like something has to happen, whether it's grace, you know, whether it's divine intervention, where we give up. Actually, that's what it was for me. It was like, I just give up. I'm on my knees. I give up trying to look, trying to seek anymore. I give up trying to improve myself, trying to be the one, trying to like sturdy my energy, you know, like everything you've been taught. And I was like, I just give up. I'm exhausted. I'm giving up of trying to be me. And for me, in that moment of giving up, there was just a spaciousness or an openness that arose where that separate self, that ego self, that self that was always trying to tell me who I was quiet. Was quiet for long enough for me to sense and feel that I'm not this singular identified Fiona. I am everything. So it's like a bubble bursts all of a sudden. It's like the bubble of identification of who you thought to yourself to be bursts, and you realize you are everything and everyone, but not in a conceptual way, like you've read it, but in a, oh no, like the boundaries just burst. And for me, that happened. And there was this sense of, the first thought that came to my head, and it made me giggle, was, oh, now you're just free to be yourself. You're just like an aspect of consciousness. You know, you're just in this body having an expression, and you're free to be all of it. So I didn't have to even try and improve myself anymore or try and be a better version of myself. I could actually just be who I was. Don't know if that makes sense. I always find it hard to kind of verbalize that.
No, it
experience or
definitely makes
awareness.
sense. Society and the way we've been raised and where we've been raised also plays a really big part in it, because the general consensus is you need to get a really good education so that you can get a really good job. And then from that really good job, you're supposed to work there until your retirement. And then you need to find the perfect partner. Then you need to buy a house together. You need to start your family, get 2.5 children and a dog and the white picket fence, and then you've lived the American dream, the European dream. It doesn't really matter. It's very
Mhm.
similar for a lot of first world countries, and we follow it. It's because we don't know any better. It's how everybody has always done it. I call it the rules, or the bullshit rules of life, that have been handed down from generation to generation about the way things are supposed to be done. And this
Yeah.
is in general how things are supposed to be done. But when you are not being yourself, when you are wearing masks, when you are playing someone in order to be liked, to be accepted, to have friends, to find a partner, to get a job, whatever your reasoning is, then you move further and further away from yourself. And if you then follow rules set by other people that might not be true for you, and when you discover they are not true for you, then you fall into this gap
Mhm.
of, well, okay, but now what then, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not prepared for this. And then indeed we start looking outside of ourselves because we are lacking information, we are lacking knowledge. And everything that has ever been told to us, have been made available to us, it's not working. So we're
Mhm.
at the stage of, well, now what? What am I supposed to be doing? And then we start searching, which is indeed a normal process. And we start
Yeah.
searching for answers. And at first, we search outside of ourselves, and we start following people, or we start reading books, or we find a mentor, or a YouTube channel, or whatever it is that we encounter, or a guru, or whatever that helps in the beginning. In the beginning, it gives us a sense of purpose, a sense of control over our lives, and that we're actually doing something with this feeling that we're having. And it might not be immediately better, but at least we're working on it, which gives us a good feeling where we're active, proactively
Oh, yeah.
doing stuff. And then you hit a second wall. The first wall is for me when I ended up in my burnout, because I just couldn't do the fake life anymore. It's usually a combination of a lot of things. And for me, it was both my work as well as my private situation, because it's not only a job that you choose that doesn't fit who you are often also connected to a partner that doesn't fit who you really are. And if you are, and I say unfortunately, intentionally, to have children with that wrong partner, then things become very complicated and it's not so easy to step out of it. So there are lots of things to take into consideration. And meanwhile, you're feeling miserable and depleted and empty, and you don't know where to go. So you start reading, and you start listening, and you start talking, and maybe you start following, and some sort of progress comes. And eventually you discover that all of that is good and well, but it doesn't really solve the big issue, even though the big issue is also unclear. But it doesn't feel like you're moving enough or in the right direction enough. And that is, I think, when you are ready to discover that the answers that you're seeking are within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the big who am I question. When we look outside of us for someone else to tell us who we are.
Mhm.
And that we're sovereign beings, right? We are sovereign beings, self-authorized beings. That's the truth of who we are, co-creators with the divine. And we have a unique blueprint, we have a unique essence, we have a unique soul. Like everybody's fingerprint is different, everyone's soul is different. And whilst we have incredible people outside of us who can see that and reflect it back to us, which is powerful, it's a big part of the job that I do is act like a lighthouse or a reflection, so people can sense, feel, taste their greatness because I can reflect it back to them. Still, they have to be the one that chooses that finds that remembers that, like, what's the word for it, that
Mhm.
that trusts themselves so much that this part of themselves, which is the biggest part of themselves, has never disappeared. It's never gone anywhere. It's always been there. It's like searching for your glasses on the top of your head, right? It's that thing. You're like, where did I put my glasses? Like, who am I? Who am I? And the glasses are like right there. Who you are is right here, always. But it's your personal journey. I think like everyone's journey is so personal. And I also truly believe in I always say, take or leave whatever I say, because part of sovereignty is you claiming what you believe to be true, right? And that can change over time, and to not just take what someone else says as you know, as truth. It's like you can feel what I say, you can sense what I say, but you have to go test that, drive that, you have to go test that out for yourself to see if it's true. But this piece about understanding who you are and remembering who you are, I believe everyone's life is perfectly set up for them,
Yes.
for that journey. It can't not be,
No,
it's divine
exactly.
perfection.
I think we are born perfect into this world. And as children, we have utmost faith in ourselves. We don't doubt our ability to learn to walk. We don't doubt our ability to learn to talk. We are not even thinking about it. We just do, because we trust that eventually we will be successful. And I think it sort of goes wrong, especially when we go into the school system, because the school system is sort of geared towards, I call it a factory with a conveyor belt, right? Everybody goes in and then comes out more or less the same, with more or less the same education and norms and values. And then we have religion, which also is very restrictive in the sense it's only their vision. And if I talk about my life, I never knew about spirituality. I never knew about soul. I never knew about energy. I never knew about the law of attraction or any of the other laws of the universe that are out there. So it's natural then to start looking for things outside of yourself, because you have no idea who you are and you don't know who you actually are, but have forgotten. Because I think we forget who we actually are. It doesn't go away. We just sort of bury it down deep.
Yeah, it's always
And
there.
and then these things happen, like the accident or the car, the burnout, or whatever major event happens in your life. And then you start on your journey of discovering or remembering eventually who you are. And I've also seen that it depends on your journey. Some people have a different life path than other people. So for some people, it might seem that it's easier or that they know who they are quicker than other people do. But it's all part of what you came here to do. And for certain roles, you need to have lots and lots of experiences. So your life can be one of lots of trials, lots of errors, lots and lots of hardships. Mine was, but I've learned that it was to prepare me for the work that I do. And I could be jealous of people who had a business that started later than me and that were already very successful and seemed to know exactly who they are. And that's, I think, a pitfall when you start on your journey, that you compare yourself to others, which is, well, incomparable. It's like apples and oranges.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're right there. It's like, for me, this returning to wholeness, right? You're not separate. And then if we're not separate, then you and I aren't separate either. And to compare, it's like you say, it's like comparing a tree to a tree to a dog. It's like you cannot. And yet it's our conditioning that does it, right? I think the piece that makes us look outside of us is because that's what we're told to do at school. And so our conditioning leads the seeking process until the conditioning has broken down enough or disintegrated enough for you to become more of an authority of who you are. But even then, I feel like the divine self and the human self there can come a stage where you feel like almost like there's two separate parts of you, like you can see, sense, and feel and experience from that higher self, from that divine self. You can see the bigger lesson, but your human self is still she's still having her old ways about it. She's still having her little tantrums. She's still you know, being who she is. And for me, you know, remembering who you are is remembering that you are a messy, divine human. You're not meant to be a perfectly enlightened spiritual being here on this earth. Souls come to this earth to experience. And your soul doesn't distinguish between what's a good experience or a bad experience. We're literally here to experience. And our minds have a really hard time with that because we want it to be the aligned experience, the perfect experience, the successful experience. But I think that, you know, ultimately we have to surrender deeply to this life, to this perception of controlling this life even, you know.
Yeah.
And that comes through, for me, marrying the divine with the human, allowing my human to be exactly as she is and not trying to control her, and letting her be that channel where the divine can also come through. And I always show up with my clients from a place of shoulder to shoulder, sister to sister circle. I don't participate in all paradigms of hierarchy or expert client, you know, it just that it's all paradigm. And a lot of spirituality is simply patriarchal ways, just in a in a different package. So I think there's even another disintegration that happens there, right? It's that you go into spirituality and you come in with your conditioning and you're still seeing it through your conditioning, and then that begins to dissolve even deeper. But embracing your humanness, embracing what you feel and not trying to bypass it. All of that piece for me is such a potent part of feeling free to be who you are, because we've been told that emotions are too big or too messy. We try not to show our anger. We try and please others. It's all controlling our truth. It's all controlling, because as a child, you know, children should be seen and not heard. We're still from that era. Like, my parents didn't say it to me, but my grandparents said it to me. You know, we're still in those eras where full emotional expression, like, I'm from England, stiff upper lip, you know, like, you don't say it. And so part of freedom for me is to be fully human, to be angry, to be excited, to like, yeah, there's a huge part of that for me, is that freedom is to be all of who you are.
I totally agree. Here, when I discovered I'm highly sensitive, I went to my mother and said, Mom, I finally figured out what is wrong with me. At that time, I still thought there was something wrong with me. And I said,
Yeah.
I am highly sensitive. And my mother said, Yes, child, I know I am one too, but that is not something to be proud of. And I didn't understand at first until I remembered that my grandmother actively was in the Second World War. And they literally saw people that are different being deported to a concentration camp and killed. So she genuinely believed that it was better to be just like everybody else. And they also believed that you don't air your dirty laundry and you don't talk about people. So when you talk about the stiff upper lip, that was also normal in my country. And that influenced my mother, and that then also influenced myself. But I loved what you said about, well, the new you and the old you, because that's the in between stage where you are changing and you are learning and you are growing, and eventually you will have experiences where you think, oh, this is interesting. My old self would have done yada, 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 yada. And
Yeah.
now I'm feeling dida, dida, dida. And, oh, this is interesting. Or you would say, oh, yeah, my old self would have responded in this way. And I don't feel that way anymore. Oh, that is interesting, or that is awesome. And so this is a very beautiful stage to be in, because it means that you are growing as a person. And at the end stage is indeed what lots of people ask me about is, why don't you care what other people say or think? And it's, well, I used to care a lot more than was healthy for me. Um, Now it's not so much that I don't care. It's more that I know my truth. I know who I am. I know where I'm coming from. I know where I'm going. And I am free to express all the parts of myself. And well, I think partly because I'm from the Netherlands, we are always very direct. So, what you see is what you get, literally. I am a WYSIWYG person. And not everybody can handle that. I know there are lots of European countries that would rather lie or cheat or be dishonest than be honest with people because of the way it can come across. And it is incredibly liberating when you don't have to worry about all of these things. And don't take me wrong, it's not an okay to just say things to people that might hurt them, right? I don't ever come from a place of wanting to hurt people, but it's more that if I know that I'm coming from a really good place, then I don't worry about how it comes across. And if it still comes across negatively for someone else, while my intentions were pure and light and love, then
Mhm.
I know it is this person's journey or this person's paradigms or whatever is still the learning process of this person that makes them respond in this manner. And that also means that I don't have to take it personal.
Yeah, I always like to say it's not personal, it's vibrational. Like it's a certain we can be talking at different frequencies with people. And so one person might be offended by what you say, depending on the frequency, the consciousness that they're residing in, and another person not take it personally at all. And so that's also very liberating when we realize everyone's on their own journey, everyone's in their own world of consciousness too. And so trying to conform, you just can't, try and, what we were doing before is trying to match everybody where everybody else was at. And now what we do is we've become so full of ourselves in the most potent and beautiful way. And I talk a little bit about it as like an essential oil. It's like you distill your essence, like you become more potent and powerful when you're more truthful and allowing your truest expression to come through. And I actually really trust that when you're in your powerful truth and being honest, it's never to hurt. It can't be to hurt. It just can't, like when you're coming from essence, I really trust that. Ego hurts. Heart doesn't hurt. Heart can be honest, but it's
Mhm.
never to be, manipulative or yeah, to hurt another. And so as you allow yourself to be more truthful and honest with yourself, as you stop judging yourself, as you allow yourself to feel and for that to be okay, you become a more honest, potent version of who you are. And like you just said, really, it's like I am medicine for the people that I'm medicine for. And so I might taste really, really sweet and smooth and be like the perfect tone and the perfect frequency of voice and the perfect message to that person at the perfect time. And there could be a person next to them and I might taste bitter. They might think I'm, like they might be like, oh, what is this? And it's like, that's the freedom that I get to show up as me and trust that because vibration and frequency is the law,
Yeah.
I will attract to me those that are a right fit for me. I don't have to worry about weeding out anymore in some ways
Mhm.
because I know who I am, my boundaries are clear, and I'm going to invite in someone that's ready for my medicine.
Yes, I love how you're saying that. And it reminded me of another interview that I did with BB Phoenix. Her interview was called To Be Full of Yourself. And that's literally
Mhm.
what you said before. And that is what it is, right? It's remembering who you actually are, that you are a soul having a human experience, and that everybody is connected to source, and every animal is connected to source, every plant is connected to source, everything is connected to source. So we are all connected in an energetic, vibrational way. And when you remember that, then you can be very pure. You don't have to make yourself look better or more smarter or intelligent, more intelligent, or any of the things that we often think we need to be in order to get a partner, get a job, or whatever. It's about trust, right? This
Yeah.
deep trust in who you really are, and letting go of expectations, letting go not only other people's expectations, but also our own expectations.
Yeah.
And for me, a really big realization was that I don't actually have to steer the ship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the river that is life, I was trying to actively steer my ship, and I was upgrading my ship, and I was hiring
Mhm.
people to row my boat, but I was still going upstream. And in
Yeah.
the end, when you just flow with who you are and what you are destined to be, then there is no resistance, there is no hardship, there is just effortlessness. And because we don't know this, we've not been taught this, we haven't seen this, we don't trust it.
Yeah. Well, we're programmed for hard work. We're programmed for stress. We're programmed for struggle. And so ultimately, this shift into remembering who you are or being free to be who you are is a shift in where you're operating from,
Hmm.
the point from which you're operating from. I would say when you're operating from pure ego, separate self, where you think you're a separate self in the world and you have to protect yourself and you have to prove yourself, it's always going to be struggle. You're always going to be putting out energy. But when you remember who you are, and for me, it's from the heart, it's dropping deeply into the heart. That's where we remember. There is no trying or efforting, because this wisdom, this knowing of who you are lives there. It's like a child. A child isn't efforting to be who they are. When you have children yourself, you realize they come in so uniquely themselves,
Hmm.
right? They have their own personality. They're not trying. That's just who they are. And so that heart remembering for me is this
Hmm.
shift in where you're operating from, where you go back to operating from that very innocent, very open, very heart wide open space, which is actually really childlike. It's very curious. It
Hmm.
doesn't take things personal. There's not a lot of efforting. There is flow. And so yeah, switching operating systems, and it can be something that like can happen in a moment, in an aha, in an awareness, in a consciousness shift, or it can just be something that's happening gradually over time, over time, over time. You realize that you're living in your heart, that you're more compassionate with yourself, you're judging yourself less, and therefore you judge others less. Because when you remember that you are divine, when you remember that you're divine, it just is. It's truth. So for me, when there's truth, there's no argument with it, right? It's
No.
clean, it's clear, it just is. I am
Yes.
divine.
Yeah.
And if I am divine, my worthiness couldn't ever be in question. My enoughness couldn't ever be in question. Struggling and trying to find who I am, it doesn't come into question because I am
Well,
divine, just like a rose is a rose.
yeah, my
I
source
am
is
what I am.
perfect, and if we stem from source and we are connected to source, then we are perfect too.
Yeah.
End of
And
story.
so are you. And so is everyone else. And that
Yes.
really changes things. It's like, if I am divine, well, then so are you.
Yes.
And that really helps, like, that,
Exactly.
that's a wake-up call. And so they're enough as they are,
Hmm.
because you're seeing, it's like, I don't know whether you had this shift, but it was like, I remember having this shift of like seeing souls and not personality. Like I could see the personality, but what was strongest to me was like the essence of who someone was.
Hmm.
That's what I could feel and taste
I've
the strong.
always been able to see the real essence of a person, and that has sometimes led to problems because I could see the real essence and they
Mhm.
weren't able or ready to be that in everyday life. And
Yeah.
for me, then it was difficult sometimes to give up on people, especially in romantic relations, because you could see the potency, the
Potential.
potential
Mhm.
of what someone actually is, and then you see how they are acting and how they're being, and that's usually not congruent with each other. And it took some time to learn the lesson that you need to allow people to live their path and learn their lessons. And sometimes that means you need to say goodbye to people. You need to let people go because you are only meant to be in their lives for a small part, or maybe they are meant to be in your lives for a small part. And
Mhm.
sometimes people are meant to be in your life for 18, 20 years and then have to leave because they've reached the end of their station in your life because you've grown to a higher level that they cannot follow in. And it's too disruptive to continue to be in each other's orbit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just a deep place of surrender. And I think that,
Yes.
for empaths and healers in particular, this complete surrender to you can see who someone is, you can reflect someone who they are, but they have to reach out and grab that, that's the self,
Yes,
that's the
exactly.
self-authority, that's the sovereignty. And no one can control that but that person. And so there can be sadness in that, there can be grief in that. But also for me, there's deeper than that. It's just a deep trust again in that person's journey, that person's process. And who am I to judge
Hmm.
what that person needs or where they are in their life? It's like there's always a perfection. And I do Akashic record work, and one thing that became so clear to me with Akashic record work is that, choices are so divinely guided. Even if we think that they're the wrong choice, those choices are portals. And most people remember who they are by being who they're not, to the extreme.
Hmm.
Because we live in a world of duality. We live in polarity here. And so to experience who you are not in extreme is not a bad thing. It is how we learn as a human. And so taking the judgment out of everybody's experience and where they are, for me, is just so critical,
Yes.
because that's the deepest acceptance. That's the deepest allowance. And to fight reality, or to want reality to be a different way, is ego for me. It's not.
Exactly. I think the world would be so much more beautiful and better for so many people if we could just let people be who they are in that moment without it having to mean anything, without
Mm.
having to get angry about it or feel hurt by it. Or sometimes people lash out and then you think, well, I'll catch you tomorrow. I hope your day goes better than, or whatever, you send them some positive love and you think, well, I'll check in with you tomorrow to see how things are going, instead of stepping into your ego, which is the part that gets hurt by things like this. And yeah, it's a beautiful journey, but it can be tough sometimes. So that's why I think it is so incredibly important to talk about all of these things. And we've had an amazing talk today, and I think a lot of you listeners out there will be very inspired by it. So I would love to hear from you. If you could share your biggest insight in the comments below this video after listening to my talk with Fiona, then I would really love it if you could do that. If you're not a member yet, then maybe you want to subscribe to the channel so that you will not miss any other really great videos. And I can also imagine that you would like to know how to get in touch with Fiona. You resonated with her energy, you resonated with her words, and you think, well, I want to talk to you. So where can people find you, Fiona?
The best place to find me is on Facebook, and my business is called Freedom with Fiona. And I also have a website, and my website is www.freedomwithfiona.com.
Perfect. I'll make
Yeah.
sure that all the links that Fiona just mentioned are included in the show notes, probably below this video, but somewhere around, depending on where you are catching this. I want to thank you so much for being here, Fiona, and for having this wonderful discussion with me today. I think we hit upon some really amazing, really important points, and I feel very grateful for having you as a guest.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been really beautiful.
I also want to thank you, listener, watcher, for your support for the show, for listening, for watching, for leaving a comment, for sharing this episode with your network, because there might be people that you know that need to hear this message today. So thank all of you for your presence, for your wonderful energy, and for your everlasting support. And I look forward to sharing another wonderful talk with you next week with another beautiful guest. For today, I wish you an amazing rest of your day, and I will talk to you again soon.